Imagine standing in a glittering ballroom, 300 pairs of eyes fixed on you, as your own sister, your blood, raises her hand and slaps you across the face. The sting isn't just physical, it's betrayal, raw and public. My sister Elise did this to me at her wedding, a moment meant for love, twisted into humiliation. Why? All because I refused to surrender my Seattle penthouse, the home I poured my soul into earning. That slap wasn't just an outburst, it was the breaking point of years of entitlement, resentment, and family secrets waiting to unravel. I'm Nora, 34, a real estate agent in Seattle, where I built my life brick by brick. My penthouse in the Emerald Tower, with its sweeping Puget Sound views, wasn't just a home, it was my proof that hard work could outshine the shadows of a complicated family. Growing up, Elise and I were opposites. I saved, planned, sacrificed. She demanded, drifted, always expecting handouts from our parents, Diane and Harold Peterson. While I worked 2 jobs through college, she cycled through dreams without effort. My success became her target, my penthouse her obsession. When she announced at her wedding that she'd move in, claiming I'd offered it, I faced a choice: stay silent to keep the peace or speak my truth. That choice led to a moment that shattered our family, exposed hidden lies, and forced me to confront what family really means. This isn't just my story, it's for anyone who's ever had to stand up to those closest to them, knowing the cost might be everything. You won't imagine what happened next: secrets exposed, a courtroom battle, and a family forever changed. This journey taught me boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. Want to know how Elisa's plan crumbled and what I found on the other side? Stick with me to the end, you won't believe how it unfolds. If you've ever faced family drama, share your story in the comments, I read them all. Like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this raw, real story about finding strength in betrayal. Growing up in suburban Seattle, my sister Elise and I lived in a world that looked perfect from the outside. Our parents, Diane and Harold Peterson, gave us a comfortable life: 4-bedroom house, summer trips to the Oregon coast, school plays, and soccer games. But beneath that polished surface, the cracks were already forming. I was the planner, the one who'd save every penny from my paper route, dreaming of a future where I could stand on my own. At 8, I'd map out my allowance in a notebook, calculating how much I needed for a new bike. Elise, 6 years younger, was different. Our parents called her a free spirit, but that was their gentle way of saying she expected the world to bend to her whims. If she wanted ice cream, Mom would drop everything to get it. If she broke a toy, Dad would replace it without a word. I'd watch, confused, as my complaints about her messes were brushed off. "Nora, she's sensitive," Mom would say, her voice soft but final. "Not everyone's as independent as you." That phrase became a refrain, a quiet signal that my needs came second. By 10, I was doing chores to earn extra cash, while Elisa's whims were indulged without question. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a pattern that shaped us both. I learned to rely on myself, to build my dreams through effort. Elise learned the world would catch her if she fell, or so she thought. Those early years planted the seeds of a divide that would grow deeper, setting the stage for a betrayal I never saw coming. The signs of Elisa's entitlement showed up early, like storm clouds on a clear day. At 12, I saved a year for a telescope to stargaze, my first real passion. It was my pride, carefully polished, kept on a shelf. One day, Elise, just 6, took it to a backyard party with her friends. I found it later, lens cracked, tripod bent. She shrugged, saying it was an accident. I waited for Mom to scold her, to make it right, but instead, she sighed, "She's young, Nora, let it go." My anger burned, but I swallowed it, learning that Elisa's mistakes were always excused. Another time, I caught her wearing my favorite jacket, the one I'd bought with birthday money. She'd stained it with juice, but Dad just chuckled, "Kids will be kids." Those moments weren't just about a telescope or a jacket, they were about a truth I couldn't yet name. Elise was being taught she could take what wasn't hers, that consequences were for other people. I started hiding my things, locking my dreams away, not realizing I was building walls not just against her, but against the family that let her slide. By high school, the divide between Elise and me was undeniable. I was 16, juggling part-time jobs, waitressing, tutoring, to save for college. I'd stay up late studying, determined to earn a scholarship to the University of Washington. Every dollar I earned went into a savings account, every grade a step toward my future in real estate. Elise, 10 and then 12, was different. She cared about popularity, not plans. She'd spend her allowance on clothes, then ask Mom for more when it ran out. Our parents paid her phone bill, her car insurance, even her prom dress, while I bought mine from a thrift store. When I graduated with honors and a partial scholarship, they threw a modest dinner. When Elise barely scraped through 2 years later, they sent her to Hawaii to decompress from the stress. I remember standing in our kitchen, diploma in hand, hearing Mom say, "Elise needs more support, Nora. You've always been so strong." Strong. That word felt like a weight, not a compliment. I was proud of my achievements, but the unfairness stung. Elise's life was a parade of second chances, while I fought for every step. I didn't know then that this pattern, her entitlement, my sacrifice, would follow us into adulthood, growing uglier until it exploded in a way that would change everything. College was where I found my stride, but also where the gap between Elise and me became a chasm. At the University of Washington, I majored in business with a focus on real estate, fascinated by how properties could shape lives. It wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs, barista by day, retail clerk by night, to keep student loans low. My weekends were spent studying in a cramped dorm, eating ramen to save money. Every sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of my dream, to own a home that was mine, undeniable. Elise, meanwhile, drifted through 3 community colleges, changing majors whenever the work got tough, art, then fashion, then something vague about marketing. She'd call home, complaining about professors or stress, and our parents would send money or let her move back rent-free. I'd hear about it during rare family dinners, where Mom would say, "Elise is finding her path, Nora. Be patient." Patient. I was tired of that word. I graduated with honors, landing an entry-level job at a top Seattle real estate firm. It was grueling, long hours, demanding clients, but it felt like progress. Elise, by then 20, was still at home, working odd retail jobs, quitting when they bored her. Once, she borrowed my car for a quick errand and returned it with a dent, no apology. "You're so serious, Nora," she'd laugh, as if my focus was a flaw. Those years showed me the truth. I was building a life through discipline, while Elise coasted on excuses. Our parents enabled her, blind to how it fueled her entitlement. I didn't know then that my hard-earned success, a penthouse I'd fight for, would become her next target, or that our childhood roles would lead to a public betrayal that would shatter our family in front of 300 witnesses. After college, I stepped into the fast-paced world of Seattle real estate, landing a job at a prestigious firm specializing in luxury condos. The hours were brutal, early mornings, late nights, weekends spent showing properties to demanding clients. But I wasn't just chasing a paycheck, I was chasing a dream. Ever since I was a kid, I'd been fascinated by how homes shape lives, how a space can become a sanctuary. My goal was specific: a penthouse in the Emerald Tower, a modern marvel with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. To get there, I lived far below my means. My apartment was a cramped studio with creaky floors and second-hand furniture. I skipped vacations, trading tropical getaways for extra shifts. I bought clothes from thrift stores, while my colleagues flaunted designer labels. Every meal was home-cooked, every coffee brewed in my tiny kitchen. Each sacrifice was a choice, a step toward something bigger. I'd lie awake at night, running numbers in my head, calculating how much I needed to save, how many deals I needed to close. The hustle was relentless, but it felt right. I was 25, building a life on my own terms, proving to myself that hard work could turn dreams into reality. My parents didn't understand my drive. They'd say, "Nora, slow down, enjoy life." But I wasn't just working for me, I was working to escape the shadow of a family that always put Elise first. That penthouse wasn't just a home, it was my declaration of independence, a symbol of everything I'd fought for. At 30, after 3 years of relentless hustle, I stood at the edge of my dream. The Emerald Tower penthouse, 2,000 square feet of sleek luxury, with panoramic views of Puget Sound, was within reach. I'd built a reputation as one of the firm's top agents, taking on clients others avoided, closing deals through sheer determination. When the unit went on the market, I wasn't the only one eyeing it. Wealthy investors, tech moguls, they all wanted it. But I'd run the numbers meticulously, saved every penny, and prepared for this moment. I outbid them all, my heart pounding as I signed the papers. The mortgage was steep, but I knew I could handle it. That day, I walked into the empty penthouse, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. The view took my breath away, water sparkling under the Seattle sky, Mount Rainier in the distance. This wasn't just a purchase, it was a victory. Every late night, every missed vacation, every thrift store find had led to this. I'd done it on my own, no handouts, no shortcuts. For the first time, I felt untouchable, like I'd built something no one could take away. Or so I thought. The first night in my penthouse, I stood on the private terrace, watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of gold and crimson. The city stretched out below, alive with possibility, and for once, I let myself feel proud. This wasn't just a home, it was the culmination of years of discipline, of saying no to instant gratification for something lasting. I ran my fingers along the quartz countertops, opened the gourmet kitchen cabinets, and imagined the life I'd build here. I'd sacrificed so much, friendships faded, vacations skipped, countless nights alone while others partied. But standing there, watching the light fade over Puget Sound, I knew it was worth it. This penthouse was my sanctuary, a physical reminder that I could shape my own future. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who didn't need rescuing. That night, I wasn't just Nora, the sister who always gave in. I was Nora, the woman who'd carved her own path. I thought of my parents, who never saw my struggle, and Elise, who coasted through life. This moment was mine alone, a quiet triumph, until Elise's shadow crept in, threatening to claim what I'd fought so hard to earn. Elise never saw my penthouse as my achievement, she saw it as something she could claim. By 26, she was still living with our parents, cycling through retail jobs she'd quit when they bored her. Mom and Dad paid her phone bill, her car insurance, even her credit card debt, while I was out here building a life from scratch. Her entitlement wasn't new, it was a thread woven through our childhood, now unraveling into something uglier. She'd borrow my things without asking, like the designer handbag I'd saved months for, returning it weeks later with wine stains. "Oops, I'll replace it," she'd say, but she never did. Once, she needed my car for a quick errand. I got it back with a dent and an empty tank, her only response a shrug and, "You're so serious, Nora." At my housewarming, I invited her, hoping she'd share my joy. Instead, she walked through my penthouse, running her fingers over the quartz counters, staring at the view, and said, "Must be nice to have cash to burn. Some of us aren't so lucky." Her tone wasn't admiration, it was envy, sharp and cold. I brushed it off, used to her jabs, but it stung. She didn't see the years of thrift stores, the ramen dinners, the clients I'd fought to win. To her, my success was a fluke, something she deserved more than I did. Weeks later, she asked to use my credit card for an online course to change her career. I said yes, against my better judgment, and the money never came back. Another time, she crashed my car again, leaving scratches she didn't mention. Each incident was a small cut, a reminder of how she took without giving. I started locking my doors tighter, not just to my home but to my heart. Elise's demands were growing, her sense of entitlement unchecked by our parents' endless excuses. "She's just finding her way," Mom would say. But I saw it clearly. Elise believed my life, my home, was hers to claim. That belief would soon explode in a way I never imagined, in front of 300 people, with a slap that echoed far beyond that ballroom. When Elise met Victor Blackwell, everything seemed to change, at least on the surface. She was 26, still living with our parents, drifting through life without a clear path. I'd given her my ticket to a charity gala in Seattle, thinking she'd enjoy a night out. That's where she met him. Victor was all charm, dressed in tailored suits, with an air of old Seattle money that turned heads. He worked in finance, or so he said, and swept Elise off her feet with grand gestures, fancy dinners, weekend getaways. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and Elise was flashing a 3-carat diamond ring that caught the light like a promise. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope for her. Maybe Victor's stability would ground her, pull her out of the cycle of entitlement and excuses our parents had enabled. I congratulated her, helped plan engagement parties, and listened to her gush about their future. She talked about a lavish wedding, a new life, and I wanted to believe she was finally finding her way. Our parents, Diane and Harold, were thrilled, showering her with praise and money for the ring's deposit. I didn't mind being in the background. I was busy with my real estate career, my penthouse a quiet sanctuary. But even then, I felt a subtle shift. Elise's calls were less about sisterly bonding and more about what I could do for her wedding. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just the excitement. I didn't see it yet, but the seeds of her entitlement were sprouting again, ready to tangle around my life in ways I couldn't imagine. At a family dinner a few months into their engagement, I saw Victor's mask slip. He was holding court, boasting about big crypto investments and game-changing deals that sounded too polished, too vague. His words were confident, but his eyes darted, as if he was performing for an audience he wasn't sure he had. Elise hung on every word, but I felt a knot in my stomach. Something was off. I'd been in real estate long enough to spot a sales pitch, and Victor's felt like a house built on sand. I didn't say anything. Family dinners weren't the place for confrontation, but I started paying attention. He'd changed the subject when I asked about his work, and Elise would jump in, deflecting with wedding talk. Our parents didn't notice. They were too busy praising Victor's ambition. But I couldn't shake the feeling that his wealth was a facade, a shiny wrapper hiding something shaky. I kept it to myself, hoping I was wrong. After all, Elise seemed happy, and I wanted her to have that. But that dinner planted a seed of doubt, a quiet warning that Victor's charm and Elise's dreams might be leading us all towards something darker than I could predict. As the wedding plans took shape, Elise transformed into someone I barely recognized. The sister who'd once been content with mom and dad's handouts now obsessed over every detail of her $25,000 waterfront venue. She wanted it all: imported flowers, a designer gown, a live band playing under chandeliers. As her maid of honor, I was pulled into the chaos. My phone buzzed constantly with her texts. "Nora, can you call the florist?" "Nora, the caterer's menu isn't perfect." I was juggling million-dollar real estate deals, showing condos to clients across Seattle, but Elise didn't care. She'd called during my meetings, leaving voicemails about table linens or guest lists. If I didn't respond fast enough, she'd snap, "You're never there for me." Our parents, as always, took her side. "It's her big day, Nora," Mom would say, as if my life didn't matter. I tried to be patient, organizing her bachelorette party, helping with dress fittings, but the demands never stopped. Elise's vision was Instagram perfect, but her attitude was anything but. She'd lash out over small things, like a shade of ivory being too yellow, and expect me to fix it. I felt like her assistant, not her sister. The weight of her expectations pressed harder, and I started to see the old patterns. Elise wanted what she wanted, and everyone else had to fall in line. I didn't know then that her demands were about to escalate, targeting the one thing I'd fought hardest to protect. The turning point came one evening at my penthouse, when Elise came over to plan her bachelorette party. I'd opened my home, proud to share the space I'd earned, the sleek furniture, the Puget Sound view that still took my breath away. She walked in, her eyes scanning the high ceilings, the polished floors, the terrace glowing under city lights. I expected her to admire it, maybe even ask how I'd pulled it off. Instead, she sat on my couch, sipping wine I'd paid for, and said, "This place would be perfect for Victor and me. You don't need all this space, Nora." Her tone was casual, like she was asking for a favor, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but she pressed on. "We're starting a new life. A penthouse like this is what we deserve. You could move somewhere smaller, right?" My stomach dropped. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a demand, wrapped in that same entitled tone I'd heard since we were kids. I told her no, my voice firm but calm. "This is my home, Elise. I worked years for it." She rolled her eyes, as if my effort was irrelevant. "You're so selfish," she said, her words cutting deeper than I'd expected. I changed the subject, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. In the weeks that followed, she kept bringing it up, texts about how perfect my penthouse was for their new chapter, calls hinting I should think about family. "Our parents didn't help," Dad said. "Maybe you could help them out, Nora." It was the telescope all over again, but bigger, bolder. Elise didn't just want to borrow something, she wanted to take my dream. I started locking my doors tighter, checking my security system, sensing her entitlement was no longer harmless. That night, as I stood on my terrace, the city sparkling below, I realized this wasn't about a house, it was about Elise believing my life was hers to claim. I didn't know then how far she'd go to prove it. The morning of Elise's wedding dawned clear and crisp, with Mount Rainier standing like a sentinel against a perfect Seattle sky. I woke early, my maid of honor duties pulling me into a whirlwind before I'd even had coffee. The waterfront garden venue was a vision, white roses cascading over arches, soft waves lapping against the shore. But the bridal suite was chaos. Elise was already on edge, her voice sharp as she snapped, "Nora, you're late," though I'd arrived early. I swallowed my frustration, fetching her champagne, pinning her veil, adjusting her train as she fussed over her reflection. Our mother, Diane, hovered, her eyes flicking between us, silently urging me to keep the peace. I felt her disapproval like a weight, she'd always expected me to smooth things over. I moved through the motions, checking the guest book, confirming with the caterer, while Elisa's demands piled up. "The flowers aren't right," she complained, though they were exactly what she'd chosen. I nodded, fixed it, kept quiet. My own feelings didn't matter today, this was her moment, and I'd learned long ago to put mine second. But beneath my calm exterior, tension simmered. Elisa's earlier hints about my penthouse lingered in my mind, her entitled tone echoing. I pushed it aside, focusing on my role, but the air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. I didn't know it yet, but the day I'd poured so much into, helping plan, sacrificing my time, holding my tongue, was about to unravel in a way that would expose the fault lines in our family. As I straightened her gown one last time, I caught Elisa's eyes in the mirror. For a split second, I saw my little sister, the one I'd once protected. Then she turned away, and I felt a chill, sensing something darker was coming. The ceremony was breathtaking, a moment where time seemed to pause. Elise walked down the aisle, radiant in her gown, and for a heartbeat, I saw the little girl who'd once trailed after me, giggling. Victor stood at the altar, all polished charm, his smile practiced but convincing. The garden glowed under soft sunlight, guests dabbing their eyes as vows were exchanged. I stood beside Elise, clutching her bouquet, my heart softening despite the morning's tension. Maybe this was her turning point, a new chapter. But as I scanned the crowd, my eyes caught a silver-haired man in a tailored suit, his expression calm yet piercing. A bridesmaid leaned in, whispering, "That's Judge Lawrence Wilson, a family court judge." His presence felt significant, though I couldn't place why. He watched the ceremony with quiet authority, and I wondered what stories he'd seen unfold in his courtroom, families torn apart, truths laid bare. I shook off the thought, focusing on Elisa's vows, but his face stayed with me. The crowd erupted in applause as the couple kissed, and I clapped too, caught up in the moment. Yet a part of me couldn't shake the unease, the sense that this perfect day was a fragile facade. Judge Wilson's steady gaze seemed to see through it, as if he knew what was coming. I didn't realize then that his presence would soon become a lifeline, a witness to the moment that would shatter our family's carefully maintained illusions. The reception was a dream, chandeliers sparkling, tables draped in ivory, the Puget Sound shimmering beyond the ballroom windows. Guests mingled, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. I moved through the crowd, smiling, playing the dutiful maid of honor, though exhaustion tugged at me. Elise and Victor glowed, working the room like royalty. I caught Mom's approving nod, but it wasn't for me, it was for Elise, her star. Then Elise took the microphone, her voice bright, commanding attention. My stomach tightened, she hadn't mentioned a speech. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her smile wide. "Victor and I are so grateful. Our love is just the start of something incredible." The crowd clapped, charmed. Then her tone shifted, a gleam in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "After our Bali honeymoon, we're moving into Nora's penthouse in the Emerald Tower, thanks to her generosity." The words hit me like a punch. 300 pairs of eyes turned to me, applause rippling through the room. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loud I could barely think. She'd lied, boldly, publicly, claiming my home, the one I'd sacrificed years to earn, as if it were hers to give. I hadn't offered it, I'd told her no, repeatedly. Whispers spread, guests smiling at me, expecting gratitude. I saw Victor shift uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Our parents beamed, oblivious or complicit. I felt the weight of every moment I'd let Elisa's entitlement slide, every time I'd kept quiet to keep the peace. This wasn't a mistake, it was a calculated move to force my hand. I couldn't let it stand. My hands shook, but I knew I had to speak, to reclaim my truth, no matter the cost. What I said next would change everything, igniting a fire that would burn through our family. I stood, my legs unsteady, the ballroom's hum fading into a distant roar. Every eye was on me, expecting me to nod, to play along with Elisa's lie. But I couldn't. Not this time. My penthouse wasn't just a house, it was my life's work, my sanctuary, the one thing I'd refused to let her take. I cleared my throat, my voice low but steady. "I'm thrilled for Elise and Victor," I said, forcing a smile. "Their love is inspiring. But my home isn't available for them, or anyone." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. The applause faltered, replaced by stunned silence. Elisa's face twisted, her eyes narrowing with fury. The crowd shifted, sensing the tension. I saw Judge Wilson watching, his expression unreadable but attentive. Then Elise moved, faster than I could process. She lunged across the table, her hand cracking against my cheek with a sound that echoed in the silence. "How dare you humiliate me?" she hissed, her voice venomous, barely above a whisper. The sting burned, but the betrayal cut deeper. My sister had struck me, not just in front of our family, but before 300 witnesses, including a judge who'd seen it all. Gasps rippled through the room, but I didn't flinch. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. My eyes met hers, and for a moment, I saw not my sister, but a stranger consumed by entitlement. I straightened, smoothing my dress, my heart pounding but my resolve unbroken. "Enjoy your day, Elise," I said softly, then turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted, their murmurs trailing me like shadows. I felt Mom's gaze, Dad's shock, Victor's avoidance, but I kept moving. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. That slap wasn't just an act of anger, it was the breaking of a bond I'd spent years trying to preserve. As I stepped into the cool night air, I knew this was the end of something, and the beginning of something else. I'd chosen my truth, my home, myself. And no one, not even my sister, could take that away. The morning after Elisa's wedding, I woke to a pounding headache and a phone buzzing with notifications, 43 texts, 17 missed calls, none from Elise or Victor. The slap still stung, not just on my cheek but in my soul, a wound carved by my own sister in front of 300 witnesses. Friends sent messages of shock, some offering support, others asking what happened. Family acquaintances danced around the truth, their words vague, as if I'd somehow provoked her. My parents' silence was louder than any text. They'd seen it all, her lie about my penthouse, the slap, yet they hadn't called. I sat in my Emerald Tower home, staring at Puget Sound, feeling like the family I'd fought to hold together had fractured beyond repair. Elise and Victor were already on their Bali honeymoon, funded by his parents, as if nothing had happened. I pictured her laughing on a beach, untouched by the chaos she'd caused, while I replayed that moment, wondering if I could have handled it differently. But no, speaking my truth was the only way. I'd spent years swallowing her entitlement, letting her take pieces of me. Not this time. My penthouse, my dream, was mine, and I'd defend it. Yet the betrayal wasn't just Elisa's. Mom and Dad's refusal to reach out cut deeper, their favoritism laid bare. I felt alone, untethered, questioning every family bond I'd trusted. Then an email arrived, unexpected, from Judge Lawrence Wilson, the silver-haired guest who'd watched it all unfold. His words were brief but firm: document everything, protect yourself, consider legal action. That message was a lifeline, pulling me from despair toward resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my home, I was fighting for my dignity, for the truth Elise had tried to twist. A few days later, my building's security team called, their voice tense. Elise and Victor had shown up at the Emerald Tower, demanding access to my penthouse. They claimed I'd given them permission to move in, spinning the same lie from the wedding. My heart raced as I pictured them at my door, believing they could just walk into my life. Security sent me footage, and there they were, Elise gesturing wildly, Victor arguing with the guard, his polished charm cracking. They'd even brought a suitcase, as if my home was theirs to claim. I felt violated, my sanctuary threatened by their audacity. That night, I called a locksmith, changing every lock, my hands shaking as I handed over the payment. I couldn't sleep, haunted by the thought of them forcing their way in, of Elisa's entitlement escalating beyond words into actions. The footage was proof, chilling in its clarity, of how far she'd go. I saved it, remembering Judge Wilson's advice. My parents finally called, not to apologize, but to scold me. "Why are you making this harder?" Mom said, as if I'd wronged Elise by protecting what was mine. Their words were a fresh wound, but I stood firm. "This is my home," I told them, my voice steady. The breach wasn't just a stunt, it was a declaration. Elise and Victor weren't stopping, and I knew then I had to fight back, not just with words, but with the law. That footage, those locks, were my first steps toward reclaiming control, a quiet vow to defend the life I'd built. Judge Wilson's email gave me clarity, a push to stop reacting and start acting. I wasn't just Nora, the sister who kept the peace, I was a woman whose home, whose truth, was under attack. I hired Natalie Brooks, a family law attorney with a reputation for cutting through drama to find justice. Sitting in her office, I poured out the story, years of Elisa's entitlement, the wedding lie, the slap, the penthouse demand, and now the security breach. Natalie listened, her eyes sharp, taking notes as I handed over evidence, the security footage, text messages where Elise hinted at wanting my home, even voicemails from her wedding planning tantrums that showed her demanding nature. I'd kept everything, not knowing why until now. Natalie uncovered more, rumors of Victor's shaky finances, whispers of failed crypto ventures that confirmed my suspicions from that family dinner. "This isn't just family drama," she said. "It's attempted extortion and trespassing." Those words hit hard, turning my personal pain into something legal, something real. We filed for a restraining order, a step I never thought I'd take against my sister. I spent nights organizing evidence, replaying Judge Wilson's words, "Protect yourself." His statement as a witness was crucial, a formal account of the slap and Elisa's lie, written with the weight of his courtroom experience. I felt a strange mix of fear and strength, knowing I was crossing a line our family might never forgive. My parents called again, furious. "You're tearing us apart," Dad said, as if I'd started this. I wanted to scream, to ask why they never held Elise accountable, but I stayed calm. "I'm protecting my life," I replied, and hung up. Natalie prepared me for the hearing, warning it could get ugly. I didn't care. I'd spent too long shrinking to fit their expectations. This was my stand, not just for my penthouse, but for every time I'd let Elisa's entitlement slide. The law was my voice now, and I was ready to let it speak. The courtroom was stark, its silence heavy as I faced Elise across the room. She sat beside Victor, her face a mix of defiance and fear, while our parents watched from the gallery, their disapproval palpable. I took a deep breath, Natalie by my side, and presented our case. The security footage played, showing Elise and Victor's attempt to breach my home. Texts flashed on the screen, her words demanding my penthouse. Judge Wilson's statement carried weight, his account of the wedding undeniable. Then Natalie dropped a bombshell. Victor was under investigation for misappropriating client funds, his crypto ventures a web of fraud and gambling debts. The judge's eyes narrowed, piecing it together, Elisa's lie, Victor's desperation, their attempt to claim my home as a lifeline. Elisa's lawyer argued she was just misguided, but the evidence was ironclad. The judge granted the restraining order, barring Elise and Victor from contacting me or approaching my penthouse. He referred charges of trespassing and attempted extortion to the prosecutor, a warning that their actions had consequences. As the gavel fell, relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. I'd won, but at what cost? Elisa's glare burned into me, a mix of anger and betrayal, as if I'd wronged her. Our parents rushed to her side, not mine, their choice clear. I walked out of the courthouse, the Seattle air cool against my skin, feeling both lighter and heavier. My home was safe, my truth upheld, but my family was fractured. Natalie squeezed my shoulder, saying, "You did what you had to." She was right. This victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. I'd stood up to Elisa's entitlement, to years of being the sister who gave in. For the first time, I felt free, ready to rebuild on my own terms, knowing I'd fought for something worth protecting, myself. 3 months after the courtroom battle, Elisa's world began to crumble. Her marriage to Victor, built on his charm and promises of wealth, collapsed under the weight of his lies. The fraud investigation I'd learned about during the hearing bore fruit. Victor had misappropriated client funds, funneling money into failed crypto schemes and gambling debts. He took a plea deal, avoiding prison but losing his finance license and any shred of credibility. Elise, who'd pinned her dreams on his success, was left with nothing but the wreckage. She moved back to our parents' house in suburban Seattle, her Instagram-perfect life reduced to packed boxes and a leased car she couldn't afford. I heard about it through mutual friends, their voices laced with pity. Part of me felt vindicated. Her entitlement, her audacity to claim my penthouse, had led her here. But another part ached for the sister I'd once known, the one who'd shared my childhood before our paths diverged. I didn't reach out, I wasn't ready, but I couldn't ignore the complexity of my feelings. Elisa's downfall wasn't just her own, it was tied to our parents' enabling, their refusal to hold her accountable. Mom called once, her voice heavy, saying Elise was struggling. She didn't mention the slap, the lies, or the restraining order, as if I should fix this too. I listened, but I didn't offer solutions. For the first time, I saw their role clearly. Diane and Harold had shaped Elisa's expectations, and now they were all paying the price. Victor's plea deal was public, a quiet scandal in Seattle's finance circles, and I wondered if Elise saw the truth. Her dream life was a mirage, built on someone else's fraud. My penthouse, my life, stood untouched, a reminder that I'd chosen reality over illusion. One evening, months after the courtroom, an email from Elise landed in my inbox. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the delete button, memories of her slap still raw. But curiosity won. Her words were different, softer, hesitant. She wrote about starting therapy, about facing her mistakes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness yet," she said, "but I'm trying to understand why I hurt you." She mentioned the penthouse, admitting her jealousy, her belief that I'd had it easy. It wasn't a full apology, but it was more than I'd expected. I sat in my penthouse, Puget Sound dark beyond my windows, and read it again. The Elise who'd lied, who'd struck me, wasn't gone, but this was a glimpse of someone new, someone grappling with her truth. I didn't trust it, not yet, but I felt a flicker of hope. I replied, my words careful, "I'm glad you're working on yourself. I'm doing the same. Let's take it slow." I hit send, my heart heavy but lighter than before. Our parents pushed for more, calling to say I should meet her halfway, but I held firm. Reconciliation wasn't about erasing the past, it was about building something honest, if we could. Elisa's email didn't heal everything, but it cracked open a door I'd thought was locked forever. I didn't know if we'd ever be sisters again, not like before, but I was willing to see where this path led, one cautious step at a time. The pain of Elisa's betrayal didn't just scar me, it sparked something new. In therapy, I unraveled years of family patterns, my role as the fixer, the one who carried the weight. I started a blog, pouring my story into words, sharing lessons about boundaries and self-worth. I called it, Finding My Ground, a nod to the penthouse I'd fought for and the inner strength I was reclaiming. Readers responded, their comments flooding in, stories of entitled siblings, demanding parents, lives reshaped by saying no. I wasn't alone, and that realization was a lifeline. Writing became my way of turning pain into purpose, of helping others see they could protect their dreams too. Each post was a step toward healing, a reminder that my story wasn't just about loss, it was about resilience. The blog grew, connecting me to a community I hadn't known I needed. It wasn't about fame or money, it was about meaning, about taking the ashes of betrayal and building something real. Elisa's slap had broken something, but it also freed me to create, to find a voice I'd silenced for too long. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, not as the sister who always gave in, but as Nora, whole and unapologetic. My parents and I started talking again, monthly calls that were awkward but honest. They didn't fully understand my pain, but they listened, and that was a start. I set boundaries, refusing to be their mediator for Elisa's messes. Ethan, my partner now, moved into the penthouse, not out of need but love. We hosted quiet dinners, our laughter filling the space I'd once guarded so fiercely. The view of Puget Sound became a backdrop to new memories, proof that my home was mine to share on my terms. Judge Lawrence Wilson and his wife, Margaret, became unexpected friends, their wisdom a gift. Over coffee, they shared stories of their own family struggles, reminding me that truth often comes from those who see us clearly. My real estate career thrived, but it was my inner work that mattered most. Therapy taught me to let go of guilt, to see that protecting myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I walked my terrace at sunset, the Seattle skyline glittering, and felt peace. Elisa's slap, Victor's lies, my parents' silence, they'd shaped me, but they didn't define me. I was building a life rooted in love, honesty, and strength, ready for whatever came next. That slap from Elise wasn't just a moment of anger, it was a fracture in the foundation of our family, a sound that echoed through my life. In front of 300 people, my sister tried to claim what I'd fought for, my penthouse, my independence, my truth. It hurt, not just because of the sting on my cheek, but because it laid bare years of her entitlement, enabled by our parents' silence. I'd spent my life being the responsible one, the sister who gave in to keep the peace, but that moment changed everything. Standing up to her, saying no to her lie about my home, was the hardest thing I've ever done. It cost me the family I knew, but it gave me something greater, self-respect. I learned that family isn't just blood, it's the people who honor your boundaries, who see your worth. My penthouse, with its Puget Sound views, became more than a home, it became a symbol of my strength, a reminder that I could build a life on my own terms. Elisa's actions, Victor's lies, our parents' favoritism, they all pushed me to a breaking point, but they also pushed me to grow. I used to think love meant sacrifice, giving up pieces of myself to keep others happy. Now I know love starts with respecting yourself, with drawing lines that say, "This is mine." That slap broke something, but it also freed me to choose who I want to be, surrounded by people who lift me up, not tear me down. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger now, living a life I define. The penthouse I fought for is my sanctuary, a place where I set the rules. Therapy helped me untangle the guilt of standing up to Elise, of choosing myself over family expectations. I've learned to say no without apology, to protect my peace without fear. My blog, Finding My Ground, is my way of sharing that strength, helping others navigate their own battles with entitlement or betrayal. Each word I write is a step toward wholeness, a reminder that pain can birth purpose. I'm not the sister who fixes everything anymore, I'm Nora, a woman who knows her worth. Ethan, my partner, fills my home with love, not demands. My new friends, like Judge Wilson and his wife, show me that family can be chosen, built on mutual respect. The Seattle skyline still sparkles outside my window, a view that once symbolized sacrifice but now speaks of triumph. I've grown into someone who values herself, who knows that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to a better life. Have you ever faced family drama that tested your strength? Maybe a sibling, a parent, someone who crossed a line? Share your story in the comments, I read every one, and your words might help someone else feel less alone. This journey taught me that protecting your peace is worth every fight. If it resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more real stories about finding your ground. Let's keep this conversation going, your experiences matter. Thank you for listening, for being here, and for reminding me that we're all in this together.